Today, we're diving into a case that didn't just shock 1950s Britain, it actually changed the country's laws forever. This is the story of Ruth Ellis, a woman whose tragic life and violent crime led her to become the very last woman ever to be executed in the United Kingdom.
So, let's set the scene. Picture this. It's a chilly Easter Sunday, April 10th, 1955. We're outside a pub called the Magdala in Hampstead, which is usually a pretty quiet, leafy part of London. But tonight, that peace is about to be completely shattered. Right around 9:30 p.m., a handsome young racing driver, David Blakely, walks out of the pub with his friend. As he's fumbling around for his car keys, a woman with striking peroxide blonde hair suddenly steps out of the shadows. And that woman is his lover, Ruth Ellis. She pulls a revolver from her handbag and just opens fire.
The first shot actually misses. Blakely tries to make a run for it, but she follows him, chasing him around the car. The second bullet hits him. He collapses to the ground, and she stands right over him, firing 3 more times. And then, in this incredibly bizarre, calm moment, she turns to Blakely's friend, Clive, and says, "Will you call the police, Clive?" When the police arrive, she just tells the officer, "I am guilty."
So, what on earth drives a person to do something so public, so violent? To really get why Ruth Ellis pulled that trigger, we need to take a step back and look at the life that brought her to that desperate moment.
Well, her life was marked by hardship right from the very beginning. Born in Wales, she endured horrific abuse from her own father. She was out of school by 14 and got pulled into the pretty chaotic world of London's post-war nightclubs, working as a hostess and an escort to support herself and her young son. A short, incredibly violent marriage gave her a daughter, but also left her with even more trauma.
By 1953, Ruth's life had become this tangled, dangerous web. See, she was caught between 2 totally different men, and this situation was about to spiral into obsession, violence, and ultimately murder.
On one side, you had David Blakely. He was charismatic, exciting, but also violently jealous and incredibly abusive. And on the other side was Desmond Cousin. He was older, much more stable, and totally devoted to her. He even provided her with a flat and some security. But it was that stormy, tempestuous relationship with Blakely that just consumed her, a constant cycle of passion and brutal fights. And that relationship reached an absolutely devastating turning point just a few months before the murder. During an argument, Blakely punched a pregnant Ruth right in the stomach, and it caused her to miscarry their baby. It seems like this unbelievable act of cruelty really set a tragic course in motion.
Okay, so fast forward to June 1955. Ruth Ellis is now on trial for her life at the Old Bailey. She showed up looking striking, almost defiant, with her hair freshly bleached blonde. But her trial, well, it would be shockingly brief.
The entire case really hinged on this one question from the prosecution. You see, back in the 1950s, the law was really rigid. The idea of diminished responsibility, that your mental state could reduce a murder charge to manslaughter, that wasn't a part of English law yet. That change would come in 1957, just 2 years too late for Ruth. For her, the only thing that mattered was intent.
And with that calm, direct answer, she sealed her own fate. With no legal defense that could account for the abuse she'd suffered or her fragile state of mind, those words were a crystal-clear admission of murder. She literally gave the jury no other choice.
It took the jury just 20 minutes, that's it, 20 minutes, to find her guilty of murder. The judge had no choice but to put on the black cap and sentence her to death by hanging.
That verdict sent an absolute shockwave across Britain. A lot of people, while they didn't condone what she did, felt that the death sentence was just a cruel injustice, especially when you consider the history of abuse she'd been through.
A public campaign for mercy started up almost immediately. A petition signed by 50,000 people was delivered to the Home Secretary pleading for her life, but that plea was rejected.
And that rejection felt especially controversial, because at the time, getting a reprieve if you were a woman sentenced to death was actually pretty common. Just look at the numbers. Between 1926 and 1954, 60 women were sentenced to hang, but only 7 were actually executed. So the decision to go ahead with Ruth's execution seemed particularly harsh. Then, in a last-minute twist, Ruth revealed that her other lover, Desmond Cousin, had not only given her the gun, but had also driven her to the pub that night. But far from saving her, the Home Secretary argued this just proved the murder was even more premeditated, more cold-blooded.
On July 13, 1955, Ruth Ellis was hanged. Her case absolutely ignited the debate around capital punishment in Britain. The public outcry over her execution became a major catalyst in the movement to finally abolish the death penalty, which happened for murder just 10 years later.
But the tragedy didn't end with her death. The ripples from that Easter Sunday completely destroyed her family. Her ex-husband, George, took his own life 3 years later. Her son, Andy, who was haunted by his mother's fate, also died by suicide in 1982. And her daughter, Georgina, passed away from cancer when she was just 50 years old.
And so we're left with this question that still divides people nearly 70 years later. Was Ruth Ellis a cold, calculated killer who got what she deserved under the laws of her time? Or was she a deeply damaged victim of lifelong abuse, someone who was pushed far beyond her breaking point? Her case really forces us to confront these difficult questions about justice, provocation, and where we draw that line between guilt and tragedy.